Okay, good morning and welcome to just Daf It, Daf Shir Maseches Yevamos. We are learning today Daf Nun Ches, number 58. We have an amazing shir for you today. We're going to be talking more about this concept of Yesh Chuppah L'Psulos or Ein Chuppah L'Psulos. Can you have a chuppah? Is it a valid chuppah if you do it with a woman who you're asura to? Midinei Lav, we're talking about Nalman L'Kohen Gadol, Grusha V'chutz Kohen Hedyot. Yesterday, Rav says there is a concept of chuppah l'psulos. Shmuel says there's no concept of chuppah l'psulos. We're going to detail that more today. And in Iyos Ben Sion, we're going to talk about, it's a little strange lashon, this idea of yesh chuppah l'psulos or ein chuppah l'psulos. Basically, the way we rendered it yesterday is yesh chuppah l'psulos basically means that it apostles the woman from eating truma. And Rav Shmuel would say, "Ein chuppah l'psulos," that even if you had chuppah with someone that you're usher to, it would not passel her from eating truma. Why does the Gemara not say chuppah pasla mitruma or chuppah eno poselas mitruma? That's what we're talking about up here. Why does the Gemara refer to it in a broader term, yesh chuppah l'psulos or ein chuppah l'psulos? We're going to get into that more in Iyos Ben Sion. I was just talking to my friend over here, Rav Rafal Atias over here in Beis Medrash. He is part of the family of Rav Atiya. He said it's the same family, Atiya and Atias. Rav Atiya was the Rebbe, the primary Rebbe of Rav Yosef, who was a well-known Sephardic big rabbi in Israel. And he's sitting here, and he's learning. What are you learning over there? Matal Omed. Who told me? He told me that I'm being Mekayim 2 mitzvos with this shir. One mitzvah, the mitzvah of Limud Torah. There's also a mitzvah of teaching Torah, no? Is that a kalul that's part of the mitzvah of learning Torah, or it's a different mitzvah? The Lamed Torah, no? It's 2 mitzvos. Limud Torah, the Lamed Torah, the same mitzvah, or there's the mitzvah to learn Torah and the mitzvah to teach Torah also. He said, so maybe I'm Mekayim 3 mitzvos over here. I'm learning Torah, teaching Torah, and there's another mitzvah of Zikui Harabim. He told me that I'm Mekayim B'Havta L'Reach Hamocha by doing a benefit to the public. So I'm Mekayim 3 mitzvahs over here. You don't want to miss this. And I didn't really meet Rav Rafal so much, but one day maybe he'll come. Maybe one day you'll give a chiddush on give the Ian shir on the Daf Yomi at Ratzeh Lasod et zeh. מתי רוצה לתת למסור השיר עיון על הדף יומי? אוקיי, אולי בעברית, אולי שיר אחד משפחה חשובה כל כך. אתה לומד דף יומי?
כרגע לא, אני עכשיו עושה בסוגיות אחרות.
אוקיי. אפשר לראות אותך על הסרט? הציבור? This is the person, a very famous person. Rabbi Rafal Atias. You live here at Garpo, Betelstone? Down Betelstone. He's a Chashuv family. I have the schus. No one is listening to my shir in person, but he is partially listening. I don't know how well he understands English, but good enough I'm happy to have him sit here. It's a schus to have him part of the shir. Let's get into the shir. The Gemara on the bottom of Nun Zayin Beis says, we're discussing again Yesh Chuppah L'Psulos, Ein Chuppah L'Psulos. Amar Rami Bar Chama, the second to last line. Yesh Chuppah L'Psulos. This machlokas, whether there is a concept of chuppah for psulos or not. Bottom of the machlokas, Rav Meir, Rav Shimon. This same machlokas, Rav and Shmuel, is really a machlokas. It's in Rav Meir and Rav Shimon. We said in the Mishnah, right? We had a Mishnah on Daf Nun Vavam Beis, right? Rav Meir says that an almana is Mekudesha, there's Erusin, seen Almana, the Kohen Gadol, or Grusha V'chutz Kohen Hedyot, that apostles for Truma, according to Reb Meir, Mir Kiddushin, I'm not talking about Chuppah, Mir Kiddushin, apostles eating Truma. Rashi explains, I've been explaining until now that apostles, because even though in Arusa is Ochelis Min HaTorah, she's not eats, but Rashi, so Rashi in Nevam Beis, he says, even if the woman, she was a Bas Kohen, right? She was from the family of Kahuna, and she becomes Gudeshes to someone who's Aser to her, Medini Lav, that would passel her from eating Truma from her father's house. Others Shimon say it doesn't passel her. So So that would be the machlokas over here. Just like Rav Meir would say that kedushin would passel, we'd agree that chuppah also would passel. And Shmuel, who says ein chuppah l'psulas, he would agree say like Rav Shimon, and chuppah doesn't passel. So the Gemara on top of Nun Chesam Na'al says Rav Meir damar kedushin pasli, chuppah nami pasel. According to Rav Meir, who says kedushin is posel, chuppah is also posel. We said yesterday that chuppah. Here we're talking about chuppah without kedushin, without. That's what Rashi says on Nun Zayin Beis, without kedushin. I'm going to talk maybe it is with kedushin. Resurrection with Amri kedushin lo pasli. They say kedushin is no, it doesn't pasel. Chuppah nami lo pasli. If you had chuppah, we'll keep a simple explanation of Rashi. If you just had chuppah without kedushin, it also wouldn't pasel. Again, chuppah is either yichud or going under a canopy together. That would be chuppah. How do you know this is dependent? This machlokas Rav Meir and Rav Shimon is the same machlokas as Rav Shmuel. Dilma adkan l'kam Rav Meir hastam elav kedushin. The Kanila, he would only say that kedushin pasels a woman for eating truma from her father's house, where he's kohen her a chuppah d'lo kanala. Chuppah by itself doesn't really make a kinyan for you. Only according to Rav Huna, we don't paskin like chuppah is like kedushin according to Rav Huna. We don't paskin like Rav Huna lo. They only say that in the Mishnah. Only by kedushin it doesn't pasel the woman because it's not right. It's not close to having relations together. Which would, right, chuppah is when they go into a yichud room, right, according to most opinions. So therefore, it's karov. The next step would be bia. So therefore, it would pass according to Ezra Shimon. Ella yikal meimar b'pluksa dahani tnai. If you want to say Rav and Shmuel is totally in a machlokas tanoim, you'd have to say it a different machlokas tanoim. Desanya nisu zu v'zu ksheros upsulos. If there was nisuin, marriage usually means be'ilah, meaning a man who's a kosher and a woman is a psula, or a woman's a kosher and the man's a pasal. Or they went into a chuppah, they went into a yichud room, and they didn't have bia. Ochlos mishalova ochlos betruma. This Tana holds they get to eat from his, right. It's like an effective marriage, and therefore she's nisparn, so she gets fed from his bank account. But ochlos betruma, and she could eat truma if he's a kohen, and she's Yisrael, so she could eat truma. Nechzu, so the Gemara is medayik nichnasu mechal denisu. If there were nichnasu l'chuppah, so it must be that's the second clause in this Tana in this brisa. So it has to be nisu mamish. Nisu in the first part has to mean they actually got married. They actually a be'ilah. How could that be? The Gemara says there's actually a bia. Of course, everyone agrees that if there's a bia between a Alman and Gadol, that possible is her truma. She becomes a zona. Elav kigon shenichsa l'chuppah v'lo nivulu. Must be talking about it's one clause in the Mishnah. Really, you read it as one clause. Nisu is just a description of she went into the chuppah v'lo nivulu. Ksani ochel mishalach b'truma, and you see what that ain't chuppah l'psulos, right? It wouldn't have any effect over here, and they should eat truma. That's one Tana. Rishon ben Osher Yocham Broka Omer, he argued Kol Shebiyasa Machilasa Chupasa Machilas. Anytime where the bia would enable her to eat truma. So the chuppah also, even without the bia, the Meichler Truma Kol She'en Biyasa Machilasa Ein Chupasa Machilasa. Anytime where the bia would not allow her to eat truma, Ein Chupasa Machilasa. So therefore, the chuppah, according to Rishon ben Osher Yocham Broka, would passel her for eating the truma. Right, if the bia would pastel, so the chuppah, even though you don't have a bia yet, it would pastel from eating a truma. So the Gemara says, "Be my, how do you know this is the same machlok as the Rav Shmuel? He really holds like Rav Meir. That if she has kedushin, already pastel eating truma, not because of the chuppah. It didn't say anywhere chuppah. So the Gemara asks on that. High kol she'en biyasa machilasa en chupasa melasa kol she'en biyasa machilasa en kaspa machilasa. Right? If Rabbi Shmuel ben Osher Yocham Baruch really said like Rabbi Meir, and you want to say we're talking about kedushin, he should have said chuppah. He should have said kaspa. Kesef is kedushin. Chuppah is what we're talking about now. So he should have mentioned Rabbi Meir was talking about kedushin kesef. He wasn't talking about chuppah. That's what it says. And Mari says, "Dilma aidi da amar tanakama chuppah amar yunami chuppah." No, really, it could be he holds that way. Really, he holds like Rav Meir. The reason he mentioned chuppah is because the other Tana, the first Tana, mentioned chuppah also, but he would hold like Rav Meir. It's only kedushin, but technically chuppah by itself would not pass for eating truma. Amar of Amram, Hamilsa Amar Rav Shesha. So we really haven't resolved this. Amar Rav Shesha, Vanrino Ainim Masesin. Rav Shesha said the following thing, and he brought a proof for it. He opened our eyes from a Mishnah. Yesh chuppah lepsulos. He said conclusively there's chuppah lepsulos like Rav. That's the halacha. We paskin like that. There is chuppah. Chuppah does have effect, and it would passel the woman from eating truma either from her father's house, or it would be considered like a bia that would passel or make her like a zona. And she would have to, if her husband was a kohen, she was a grusha or chalutza, she wouldn't be able to eat truma. Tana tuna. What's the support to this? From Mishnah, Amen shalo satisi arusa v'nesua shemeres yavam knusa. Mishnah says when the sota takes a shvua, she takes a shvua that she didn't commit adultery once she was an arusa, and sua shemeres yavam knusa 4 different times. So the Gemara is hayarusa hechidami. What is the case where she swears that she didn't commit adultery when she was an arusa? Ilam with the kanilak she arusa kamashklak she arusa. Right? He warned her. The husband warned her and said, Don't seclude yourself with a man when she was an arusa, merely kedushin. Arusa usually means there's just kedusha kesef, kamashkala, she arusa, and he wants to make her drink the waters before they even consummated their marriage. Arusa bas mishtihi, can that be the meaning of this Mishnah? She doesn't drink. Arusa shmeres yavam lo shozlin on the ksuva. If the infidelity occurred when she was an arusa or shmeres yavam, the halacha is we don't let them drink the meimara, and they don't get the ksuva. Ela the kani lakshi arusa v'isatra v'kamashk lakshi nesua must be arusa. The case is he warned her when she's an arusa, and then she secluded herself while she was an arusa, and then they got married. When obviously they were together, v'kamashk lakshi nesua, and he caused her to drink when she became a nesua, when she was married. And says, "Mi badkila maya." Does the meimarim actually work for her? Vatanya v'nika avon. And then if she drinks, then the man will be freed from sins. Like Gemara says, why is talking about the man? The man also sinned, in addition to the woman, in which this would be the case, right? Because if she was secluded herself while she was in Arusa, she has the din of a sota. And a sota, it says b'nizma 3 times in the Torah. Asura l'bal, asura l'boal, asura l'truma. She's asura to the husband. So if the man got married to her, obviously if he got married to her, there was a bia. So if there's a bia, he did an avera also. So there's no point in drinking the meimara. It's not going to check whether she actually committed adultery or not. So the Gemara says, what's the case talking about? Ella the kanilak she arusa must be warned when she's arusa v'istatra, and she secluded herself as an arusa. V'nichnas ala chuppah v'lo nivola. Must be she didn't actually do a bia to the husband, which would be an avera for him. She went to the chuppah, she did a cheder yichud, or went under a canopy, below nivola, and she didn't do be'ilah. B'shmami na yesh chuppah l'psulos. And we see over here, must be, from this Mishnah, that it does have the effect. It has the effect of chuppah, in order to make her considered a nesua. She has to be considered a nesua, right? We said an arusa doesn't drink the meimara. So it makes her, chuppah has the effect in this of, even though she's psula, because she's asr to him, because she's a sota, but she can't be boal him, but she can't have bila with him, but there would be a chuppah. Now it's interesting, the word chuppah over here has nothing to do with truma over here. It has to be with actual whether chuppah takes effect to call her an isua. So it's interesting how the Gemara phrases it in a different way. This is important to Ian Ben Sion. We're going to discuss why the Gemara used lashon yesh chuppah l'psulos. So Rava rejects this with hispera the hamataratza. You're going to say this Mishnah makes sense like that. V'haki asar v'acha bar chanina midroma. V'acha came from the south. He came from the Sivos. He came from Beersheba. He came from Tifrach. Asav aisim aziz biyadeh. He had brought a brisa with his hand in his hands. Mibaladei ishech. Torah says, without your husband. Mishakadmas shkivas baal leboal. Shakama shkivas boal lebal. The whole concept of meimarim of sota only works when the husband was together with his wife before the adulterer. But if we're talking about the case of niksala chuppah v'lo nivola, then it comes out that the adultery happened before the original bila of the husband. There was no bila of the husband. In this case, there would be no concept of sota. So you can't say that arusa, that's the case of arusa, niksala chuppah v'lo nivola. We have no proof over here. Amar Rabbi Racham Mishkachasa. So Amar Racham defends it. No, what's the case talking about? Okay, so we can't say that it's talking about it must be talking about, we have to defend the Mishnah. How do we defend the Mishnah from Rav Acha's proof that it can't make sense? The Arusa, so it must be the Arusa case of the Mishnah talking about where he was warned her she's an Arusa, and then he was bowl her when she's an Arusa, Beis Avia. The Gemara says in Ksuvos, sometimes they would, in Yehuda, they would seclude themselves after the Erusin and sometimes be bowl. The Kavasa Gabi Gemara says if that's the pshat and that's the case of Arusa, so that's the case of Arusa. The Gemara says the Kavasa Gabi Shemeres Yavam. So what are you going to say about the case of Shemeres Yavam? That's one of the 4 cases mentioned in the Mishnah by Sota. Shabola Yavam Beis Chameh. It must be talking about where the Beila happened while she was waiting Yibum. She was waiting Yibum for one of the brothers, and she was Boal, one of the brothers that she was waiting Yibum. So the Gemara says the Nun Chedam and Beis on the top. Shemeres Yavam Karisla. And call her Shomeres, she's waiting Yibum. Ishto Ma'ayahi. We know if you do Yibum, if you do Be'ila, even if it's Anusa, he forces her, right? Even if they do it of Amazing, they do an Avera, they do it for the wrong intentions, that's Kona her. It's not called Shomeres Yavam, that's Ishto. The Hamar Rav Kana Lakol. Rav says that even if you do Yibum Ba'avera, you do Yibum Ba'ara, or you do Yibum Ba'ones, it would still be Kona Lagamre, it would make an entire marriage. So the Gemara says, Kishmuel, Rami Barchama was only talking about, according to Shmuel, the Amar Lo Kana El Dvarim Murva Parsha. All this kinyan, when it's done with the wrong intentions or done ba'ones, it's only Kona to pater the other brothers from Yibum Chalitza, but not for most matters of marriage. So the Gemara says, Midi Yahu Taim El Rav. Here we're talking about Rav. We're trying to defend Rav's position of Yesh Chalap Psulos. So it has to accord with Rav, and Rav says Kana Lakol. I'm a Rav Kana Lakol. So Gemara says, how come my Askina and the Gemara tries to get out of it? Going to Avad Ba Maimer. We're talking about the case of Shemeres Yavam where one of the brothers did Maimer to her, right? He gave her Kedusha Kesef. Beishama Hidamri Maimer Kona Kinyan Gomer. Maimer effectuates a full Kinyan Yibum. So that's the case of Shemeres Yavam. And then they were together. So the Gemara says, he didn't do, actually they weren't together. Maimer, they weren't together. They just did Maimer. That's Shemeres Yavam. As Kona Kinyan Gomer, and Arusa would be Baal Beis Chameh. Somewhere Yahaki Hainu Arusa. The Gemara says that's the same thing as Arusa. Arusa, where there's a Kedusha Kesef. It's the same thing as the Gemara says Tamayich Nesua V'Knusa. Right? It says 4 cases as Nesua, Arusa, Shemeres Yavam, Knusa. Nesua and Knusa. Lav Chada Milse. It sounds like the same thing. Married and Knusa, the same thing. She entered his house. Ella Nesua Didei V'Knusa the Chav. Must be talking. Nesua means where he's married to his own wife. He married a woman without a dead brother. The Knusa the Chavre, Knusa means where his brother died, and then he took the Yevamos already in, he did Bia with her. Hakanami Arusa Didei V'Shemeres Yavam the Chavre. So Arusa also means when he did the Kedusha with her, and Shemeres Yavam where it's talking about a case of Yibam where he did Maimer with her. Rav Papa Amar Papa gives a different explanation. Aitana Hu Tanya Ein Maknim Lal Arusa Ashkosak She Arusa. There's actually a brayso we found that you could, if you do kino, if you warn the arusa, even though you can't, we have a clear Mishnah that says that arusa is lo shosas l'nodas ksuva. They're not shosas that may mara, and they don't get their ksuva. But if you do warn her she's arusa, so then even though you did in suva, you did a beila, and she's your wife, still, that would be a case of sota, and you would give her the meimara. Obviously, this brayso does not accord with the 2 opinions we said before. That again, here the shchivas boel, adulterer would happen before the shchivas baal. That this brayso doesn't hold. That also doesn't hold of the fact that of nika ma'avon, that the husband can't be guilty of an avera. He did an avera over here. Still, this brayso would hold it would work. Rav Menachem Yitzchak gives a third answer. Amar Ali de Gilgal. He says, no, a totally different explanation of this Mishnah. When it says Nesua, Arusa, Shemeres Yavam, Knusa, we're not talking about a case where he warned her she's Arusa. It's a regular case of Sota. She was Nesua, she was married to him. When you take, and she becomes a Sota when she's married to him, there's no problem. Her original Bia was to her husband. He didn't do an Aveira over here. She was warned after they were already married. When you take the shvua, the Mishnah is not talking about 4 different cases. It's talking about one case, a regular case of sota. But al yeh gilgal shvua, you can, when you have already one shvua, she's taking a shvua, an oath for one thing, so therefore you could add on to that oath other oaths, even though that's not a direct, it's not where you're coming from. It's not, there's no grounds to in the first place. There's no grounds to make her swear if she's an arusa. But once you're already making her swear as for nesua, which is a valid causing to make her take an oath, so therefore she has to take an oath, even that she didn't commit adultery when she's an arusa. So it's all about one case. She has to take a case that I never committed adultery, not when I was married, not when I was arusa, not when I was yavam, not when I was knusa. I never committed adultery. Someone who does a new teaching over here, he does maimer to his Yevamos. Has two brothers waiting for, right, who could possibly do yibam, and he has another brother who didn't do maimer. I feel who kohen he kohenes, even though this this Yavam is a kohen and she's even the daughter of a kohen. Pasam in a truma, pasam of a truma. Why? Why is it pasam of a truma? Because one brother did maimer, so he was kohen her chetzian. He was kohen her halfway. Now, because he did maimer, so his brother he's forbidden midarabanan to be with her because he did a kinyan darabanan for her. So only he, the one who did maimer, can finish it off and do yibam. But his brother is asr midarabanan. So that creates an isser kiddushin, a possible isser kiddushin on the brother, on the second brother, and that would be enough to pass already for eating shuma, even though before she was eating shuma when she was married to the original brother, was also a kohen. So who is Rabbi Yochanan saying this according to? According to Rabbi Meir, Mishnah kiddushin passes. Only when did kiddushin midoraisa, that there's an isser doraisa. Alman kohen gadol grusha v'chutza kohen hedyot, at least gerusha and la kohen or mamzer at least Israelis. There's an isser doraisa. The Rabbanan miyamar. When we're talking about an isser Rabbanan, right? The second brother, when the first brother does maimer, the second brother is only allowed to Rabbanan to marry, or not midoraisa. Technically, there's a mitzvah yivim doraisa even on him. Maimer is only the Rabbanan. You're going to say Rabbi Yochanan maybe he's saying according to Rabbi Shimon, hashta mishameres to be absula doraisa achla. Even if she's waiting to do a bia psula, she did a kedushin ba'avera, that's an isra doraisa. She still gets the Rabbanan mivaye. When there's a waiting to do an Isra D'Rabbanan for the second brother, that's going to passel. Everyone agrees does maimer. One brother does maimer, that doesn't passel. Everyone would agree, even both Tanoim in our Mishnah, if the brother was a cholol, right, meaning one brother did maimer, and the second had a brother who, I guess a paternal brother, who was born out of a forbidden relationship, meaning the father had two sons. He had one son. He had three sons. One son was a Kohen, a regular Kohen. He died, and then he had another son who was a Kohen, both from valid marriages. And the third son was from a woman who was asura to him, a grusha, let's say. The first two sons were not from a grusha, and the third son was from a grusha. So therefore, it makes the child a halal. So he's a halal. So therefore, because he's waiting to do yibam to her, so therefore that would be an isra d'oraisa, a halal. To a woman, he can't marry a kohen halal. He can't marry her, so therefore, and a halal would pasla for truma. A halal does not meichel his wife in truma because he's pasla for kahuna. He loses his kedushas kahuna. So that would everyone would agree in that case. And even though normally in other cases, even Rav and Shimon say that mishtameres l'bia psula, even midaraisa would not passly from truma. That's because you have the ability to eat b'makom acher, to feed his wife b'makom acher. If he was a kohen, wasn't marrying a grusha, so he can, if he was marrying a regular woman, he can be meichel in truma. This chalak never, he's loses kedushas kuna. He can never be meichel anyone in truma. So that's why everyone agrees. Over here, she can't eat. We're talking about again in the case of Yibam, where the first brother, instead of doing maimer, gave her a get, which now invalidates Yibam. You can't do Yibam, you have to do Chalitza. Rav Yochanan Amar Ocheles, she could eat. Rish Lakish Amar Yino Ocheles, Rav Yochanan Amar Ocheles, she could eat. Afil L'Rei Meir Damar Yino Ocheles. Rav Meir and Ramish says you can't eat. How do you mean to be Absula D'Oraisa? That's only when you're waiting to do a Bia D'Oraisa, which we also D'Oraisa, or D'Rabbanan Achla. It's only D'Rabbanan. Again, once he gives her a get, the second brother only has an innocent D'Rabbanan. Rish Lakish Amar Yino Ocheles, she doesn't get to eat. Afil L'Rei Rav Shimon Amri Ocheles, they say she would get to eat. by a kedushin that is leading to a bia midaraisa that's also. Hani mili deish lahacha makom acher. Lahacha came with ein lahacha makom acher. Here, there's no way of giving her to eat over here because he can't marry her anymore once the first brother gives a get, so he can't marry her anymore. Lo. Maybe over here there is a possibility that she gets to eat truma again, because if the yavam who gave the get finishes it off and gives a chalitza, so then she was coming from a marriage where she didn't have any children, so she's chozeres lebeis avia, and she's a kohenet. She was the daughter of a kohen. She goes back to her father's house, and she could eat truma. So there is a possibility she gets to eat truma again. Chozeres paskamine bekrova lebeinasha vaha gidabe. That's when he does the chalitza. After does the chalitza, then the yibum, the attachment of zika, is gone. She goes back to her father's house. But as long as that's not done, she's still agida, she's still attached to the yavam. She's not attached to her father's house anymore. And therefore, because technically right now she has no way of eating truma over here, because she's mishtameres would be a psula, the second brother. So therefore, it would passel her. She wouldn't be able to eat truma over here. In this case, according to Reish Lakish. That's about closer to Yochanan Reish Lakish. I hope you enjoyed today's share. We will see you in Imot Ben Sion. The lights shut off just now. Perfect timing. Because the In Ben Sion is a little in the dark. You're in the dark in the beginning, but then maybe the lights will come back on. Open your eyes with a chiddush about Yesh Chopal Psulos, Ein Chopal Psulos. We'll get into that coming up now.